Good morning. This morning we're going to look at the book of Daniel. It's a survey, and this is part 1 of 2. So we're starting off with a look at Daniel from the book of Ezekiel here in Ezekiel 14. The word of the Lord came again to me, saying, Son of man, when a land sins against me by persistent unfaithfulness, I will stretch out my hand against it. I will cut off its supply of bread, send famine on it, and cut off man and beast from it. Even if these 3 men, Noah, Daniel, and Job, were in it, they would deliver only themselves by their righteousness, saith the Lord God. So Daniel is listed as one of these 3 righteous men, one of the most righteous men talked about in the Bible, one of God's great champions. He's also one of God's most loved men. In Daniel 9:21, while I was speaking in prayer, Gabriel, being caused to fly swiftly, talked with me and said, O Daniel, I have now come forth to give you skill to understand, for you are greatly beloved. And also in Daniel 10:11, and he said to me, O Daniel, man greatly beloved, understand the words that I speak to you. So Daniel was greatly beloved of God. The purpose of the book of Daniel is found in Daniel 10:14. Now I have come to make you understand what will happen to your people in the latter days. For the vision refers to many days yet to come. And he said, O man greatly beloved, fear not. So the book of Daniel, being one of the last books written, is talking about things that are way in the future, since the revelation of God was about to cease. God looked way into the future to give us future events. Now, we're not going to say much about the Daniel chapter 1. We're just going to mention that it was about the miracle of the food that Daniel and his companions decided not to eat the king's food. They wanted to stay kosher. And the miracle was that even only eating pulse, like I guess cereal or something, oatmeal to eat, they still looked better than the other servants. In Daniel chapter 2, we get into the beginning of the prophetic part of the book, and this diagram will help us get through, lead us through most of the book. God says the same thing over and over again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times in 5 different chapters. He gives the same message in different ways. And the way that we're going to be looking at here in Daniel 1, it says Daniel 1, but I believe it's supposed to be Daniel 2. Yeah, Daniel 2 is the image of 4 metals. So we see here a head of gold, a chest and arms of silver, thighs of brass, legs of iron, and feet of iron and clay. And then we'll see a stone come and hit the image in the toes, and then fill the whole earth. So Daniel chapter 2. Nebuchadnezzar dreamed dreams, and Daniel interpreted it. He said, Thou, O king, saw, because the king not only didn't know what it meant, he had actually forgotten what the dream was. But then when he heard it, he said, yeah, that's it. I remember now. But Daniel said, Thou, O king, saw us, and behold, a great image. Its head was of fine gold. its breast and its arms of silver, its belly and its thighs of brass, its legs of iron, its feet part of iron and part of clay. And you saw or you watched until a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon its feet that were of iron and clay, and brake them in pieces. Then was the iron and clay, the brass, the silver, and the gold broken in pieces together, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors, and the wind carried them away. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. So that was the dream and the interpretation. Um, sorry, that was the dream. The interpretation is that those metals represent four different kingdoms. He said, Daniel said, "Thou, O king, art king of kings," talking to Nebuchadnezzar. At that time, Nebuchadnezzar was a king over several nations. "Thou art the head of gold, and after thee shall arise another kingdom inferior to thee, and another third kingdom of brass, which shall bear rule over all the earth. And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, for as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdueth all things. And as iron that crusheth all these shall it break in pieces and crush." So these metals get continually inferior in quality, in value, gold and then silver and brass and so on. But they also get stronger as you go on. So the gold is softer, pure gold is pretty soft. And then iron, which is the strongest and breaks all things, although it's the most um, of least of value. And so these are the four kingdoms. He doesn't mention what the names of the kingdoms are at this point. He will later. But of course, the first one is the one that he's talking to, which is Nebuchadnezzar, which is the Babylonian kingdom. And then we'll know from the rest of the book that the one that comes after him is Persia, that's silver. And then the brass is Greece. And then the iron is Rome. So those are God is going into the future now to tell them what's going to happen during this time when there won't be a prophet writing prophecy or writing new books of the Bible. And as the toes, now he talks about the mountain in the image. So there's the image Nebuchadnezzar saw in his dream. And there's the stone that hits the image in the toes and becomes a mountain to fill the whole earth. And as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And in the days of those kings being the 10 toes, which is in the future after the Roman Empire, shall the God of heaven, by the way, the Roman Empire was future to Daniel, obviously, at this time also. So was the Persian and the Greek and empires. But these kings are even after the Roman Empire. And in fact, they're future still to us. So in the days of those kings, meaning the 10 toes kings, shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. So that's speaking of Messiah, the rock, cut out of a mountain without hands, coming because he comes from God rather than from man. He doesn't have a human source. Then Daniel chapter 3, we have the miracle of the fiery furnace. And just to summarize this, so there's miracles taking place in Daniel's day to um, authenticate his prophecy, to show that he is a prophet. And then there's the long-term prophecies that Daniel gave. So the miracle here was that there were some adversaries against Daniel and Daniel's companions here, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, which you can remember by the saying, "Shake the bed, make the bed, into bed we go." But Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they were cast into the fiery furnace, but they survived. In fact, they were threw in 3 men, but there was 4 men in there. So one being uh, Messiah, or you might think it's an angel, but he's just, if it's an angel, it's a special angel, because the fourth is like a son of the gods. So this is um, probably an appearance of Messiah. But in any case, it's a very special person. It's the angel of the Lord, and not just an angel of the Lord. It's the angel of the Lord, as the one that Abraham walked with. So Daniel chapter 4 is another chapter we won't go into detail on. It's not prophetic about things to come. Um, in Daniel 4, Nebuchadnezzar's heart was lifted up, and so God changed him into acting like a beast. So for 1 year, I believe, um, I'm not sure what the time is here, at the end of the days, I forget the number of days, um, then God gave him a right mind again. So for a period of time, he lived like a beast. He ate grass and was in the outside, and then somebody else ruled the kingdom. And then after that period was over, God put him back in charge again, just to show that God is in charge. And it was beneficial to Nebuchadnezzar, because he said, after those days, he lifted up his eyes to heaven, and his understanding, his mind returned to him. And he blessed the Most High and praised and honored him that lives forever. For his dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom from generation to generation, just to show that God does have authority. He doesn't often intervene necessarily, but he always has the power to intervene among the nations. And at the time of Messiah's coming to rule the earth, he will again intervene. Daniel 6 was the miracle of the lion's den. Daniel prayed. Daniel's enemies had a law made that you can't pray to any god except the king, and make a decree to any god. Only make decrees to the king. And Daniel continued to pray to the God of heaven, and so his enemies had him thrown into the lion's den. And the king was sad about that, so he came down to check on Daniel early in the morning, and he said in a lamentable voice, "O Daniel, servant of the living God, is thy God, whom thou servest, continually able to deliver thee from the lions?" And if there was no answer, of course, then the answer would have been no. But Daniel said unto the king, "O king, live forever. My God has sent his angels and hath shut the lions' mouths, and they have not hurt me." So Daniel survived that miraculously. In Daniel chapter 7, we now look at the second parallel piece of prophecy about Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome. In Daniel 7, instead of having 4 different metals, we have 4 different animals. Instead of having gold, silver, brass, and iron in different parts of the body, we have a lion, a bear, leopards, a leopard with 4 heads, and a mixed kind of beast, a fierce beast. And then we have a little horn. So Daniel chapter 7. Again, this time Daniel dreams. And 4 great beasts come out of the sea. The first was like a lion with eagle's wings and a man's heart. So that would be Babylon, because remember, the metals got of lesser value as they went on. So this kingdom had a man's heart. The others become more beastly and less manly, less human. The bear in Daniel 7:5, behold another beast, a second like to a bear, and it was raised up on one side, and 3 ribs were in its mouth between its teeth. And they said thus unto it, arise, devour much flesh. So the reason it was raised up on one side is because it's actually the kingdom of Media Persia. It was an alliance between the Medes and the Persians, but the Persians were by far the stronger of the two, and so it was raised up on one side. The 3 ribs in its mouth were the 3 nations that it conquered to become a kingdom. Here it says in Wikipedia, the Medes had originally been the dominant Iranian group in the region because Persia is Iran. Cyrus the Great rose in rebellion against the Median Empire, Cyrus being Persian, and created the first Persian Empire. He utilized his great tactical genius to incorporate into the Persian Empire the neighbor Lydian, Babylonian, and eventually Egyptian kingdoms. So those are the 3 ribs in the mouth of the bear. And of course, this is all future to the time that Daniel's making this prophecy. The next beast, the leopard, Daniel says, after this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon its back 4 wings like of a bird. The beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. So 4 heads and 4 wings. Wings are always mentioned in regard to Greece because of the speed with which Alexander the Great conquered the world. So, of course, it's not every empire in the world that's ever mentioned, but the ones that have had the most to do with Israel. So, the four heads represent the 4 kingdoms that Greece split into after Alexander the Great. So here we have a map showing the 4 parts. The Hellenistic world after the defeat of Antigonus at the Battle of Ipsus in 301 BC. This is from Wikipedia again. The Hellenistic period is the period between the death of Alexander the Great in 323 BC and the emergence of the Roman Empire, as signified by the Battle of Actium in 31 BC and the subsequent conquest of Ptolemaic Egypt in 30 BC. When Alexander the Great died, he left behind a huge empire. by 281 BC, with all the fighting among his generals, I think there was about 10 main ones, the situation had stabilized, resulting in four major domains: Antigonid, Ptolemaic, Seleucid, and Attalid. So those are the four kingdoms we showed up here that came out of the Greek Empire of Alexander. And then finally, going back to our picture, we had the lion, which was Babylon. The bear on one side with the three ribs was Media Persia. Greece would come next in the future, with Alexander conquering swiftly, and then the four generals eventually having long-lasting empires. And then finally, Rome, which is described as a fierce beast. The fourth beast is that fierce beast. After this, I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, terrible and powerful, and strong exceedingly. It had great iron teeth, just like the iron in the legs of the previous vision. It devoured and brake in pieces. It stamped the residue with its feet. It was diverse from all the beasts that were before it. So it's not a leopard or a bear or a lion. In fact, it's got parts of all those things. It's a mixture. And it had 10 horns. I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another horn. So the 10 horns would relate to the 10 kings that we saw in the 10 toes of the previous, in chapter 2, previous prophecy. And out of those 10 horns comes up another horn, a little one. But even though he's little, before which 3 of the first horns were plucked up by the roots. So if there were 10 and you take away 3 by one of them, take away 3, you got 7, but you got the one that defeated the 3, so you have 8 now, 8 horns. And behold, in this horn were eyes, like the eyes of a man, and a mouth, speaking great things. The eyes, we'll see, symbolized his knowledge. And of course, with the computer surveillance we have on everything we do nowadays, the one who rules in the future will have not only his own personal knowledge, but he'll also be able to see everything we do. Everybody does. And he also has a mouth speaking great things. He's not a humble person. He shares the same sin as his father, Satan, who was the original sin of wanting to ascend into the mountain of God and saying, I will ascend into the mountain of the Most High, and I will, do this, and I will do that. So this is continuing this vision. It doesn't end with this man, this little horn who speaks great things and has great knowledge. It ends with the Messiah. I beheld till thrones were placed, and one that was Ancient of Days did sit. His raiment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like pure gold. His throne was fiery flames, and the wheels thereof burning fire. The wheels are also mentioned in Zechariah chapter 1, referring to the Shekinah glory. A fiery stream issued and came forth from him. thousands of thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were opened. So there is a judgment coming. I beheld at that time, because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake, I beheld even till the beast was slain, and its body destroyed, and was given to be burned with fire. So in the previous image, the image was smitten in the toes, but it was pulverized into powder, and the wind blew it away. Here, the body is destroyed, and it was burned with fire. In both cases, there's no traces left of the kingdoms of this world once Messiah's kingdom is set up. And as for the rest of the beasts, their dominion was taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. So probably their lives were prolonged for a season at a time through the mixture that was the Roman Empire. And continuing the vision, I saw in the night visions, and behold, this is the same vision though, same time, same prophecy. I saw in the night visions, it continues right on, and behold, there came with the clouds of heaven one like unto a son of man. And this is Messiah. And pretty much any single man that's really important in the Bible is the Messiah. He's the one who's goings forth are of old. He's been prophesied since the beginning, his coming. And of course, there's a second man that's pretty important we just looked at, and that's that little horn who won't last. He's the anti-Messiah, the one who is the opposition to the Messiah. But the Messiah, of course, will conquer. So there came with the clouds of heaven one like unto the Son of Man, and he came even to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. The Ancient of Days we saw with the fiery flames and the 10,000, thousands of thousands before him. So this one like the Son of Man comes even to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him, and there was given to him dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all the peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. But the saints of the Most High shall receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. So the clock is ticking, and the time of the kingdoms of this world will eventually cease, and the Messiah will conquer the anti-Messiah, the little horn, and establish his kingdom, and that will last forever. There won't be another sequence of kingdoms after that. So then I desired to know the truth concerning the fourth beast, and concerning the 10 horns, and the other horn which came up, and before which 3 fell. So each horn is a king, right? We saw that in the first image, the first one about the 10 toes, 10 kings. So these 10 horns are also 10 kings. So one king, one ruler of some nation, destroys 3 other kings, and well, he's not even a ruler of a nation, I guess, but he takes over 3 nations. Even that horn that had eyes and a mouth that spake great things. In other words, he's very boastful. He's not humble. He's not submissive to the God of heaven, for sure. Whose look was more stout than its fellows. I beheld the same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them. So he doesn't just make war against the other kings and conquer 3 of them. By the way, when he conquers the 3 of them, the other ones go along with him, because they'll know that the same thing would happen to them if they fought. So he leads the other seven that are left. And he leads them into war against the saints. And he prevails against the saints. Um, the saints, meaning the people that know God, especially the people in Israel at that time, in the future, the people in Jerusalem, the people in the mountains of Edom, taking refuge. Um, he prevails against the saints all over the world, actually. It's the time of Jacob's trouble, is what I think Isaiah called it. The day of the Lord. And he's prevailing against them right up until the last minute, according to the last chapter of Zechariah 14, where at the last minute the Messiah shows up and defeats the armies of the world. So he prevails against them until the Ancient of Days came. Well, he comes in the person of Messiah. God, he is God's representative. And judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time came that the saints possess the kingdom. So it's already certain that the saints will possess the kingdom, but the time is not yet. The time has to come. Continuing on the same passage. Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be a fourth kingdom upon the earth. And we know from history now that it's Rome. And as for the 10 horns, out of his kingdom shall 10 kings arise. So out of the Roman Empire, 10 empires arise. And another shall arise after them. That would be the horn that destroyed 3 of the 10 kings. So the 10 kings are contemporary. They're the earth divided into 10 kingdoms. And after them another shall arise, which is the little horn, and he shall be diverse from the former, and he shall put down 3 kings. And he shall speak words against the Most High. So he is, instead of in Psalm 2, kissing the Son, lest he be destroyed, he's raging against the Son, and he's leading the kingdoms of the world to rage against the Son. And he shall wear out the saints of the Most High. He'll persecute Jewish people. He'll persecute all people who have no God. He'll persecute the righteous Gentiles. He shall wear out the saints of the Most High. He shall think to change times and the law. And they, the saints, will be given into his hand until a time and a times and a half a time, which is referring to a year, 2 years, and half a year. So 3.5 years. And we know from other passages we'll look at soon. So they're given into his hand by God. Why does God allow this to happen? Why does God allow his saints to suffer under this man and be destroyed? And yet he does allow it to happen for a time. And then in his timing, he sets up the Messianic Kingdom. Continuing with the same passage, verse 26. But the judgment shall be set, and they shall take away his dominion, to consume and to destroy it unto the end. And the kingdom and the dominion and the greatness of the kingdoms under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. The judgment as to what people have done, obviously the judgment of that man, that little horn, will be a terrible judgment, and the judgment of all people. And how did they deal towards the saints of the Most High when they were being persecuted? Did they protect them? Did they sympathize with them? Or did they cooperate and participate in the persecution of the saints? In addition to everything else that we do in life, God, who watches all things, will bring us into judgment for everything. Um, but the saints of the Most High will inherit the kingdom. Okay, Daniel 8 gives the third parallel uh, vision that tells the same story, but in the form of a ram and a goat, and the little horn will show up again. And going back to our picture, we had Babylon was the head of gold and the lion. Now, Babylon isn't mentioned here in this vision. We had Persia being the silver uh, chest and the bear. In this one, Persia is a ram with two unequal horns, Media being the smaller horn and Persia being the bigger horn. And we had Greece as the brass thighs and the four-headed leopard with wings. And in this image, this prophecy, um, Greece is a he-goat with one big horn, being Alexander the Great. Still future, according to though in this time that Daniel was making his prophecy. But God knew what was going to happen, obviously. If he can create the worlds, he can know what's going to happen in the future. And he can certainly tell somebody who can write it down in a book. Um, and then Rome was the legs of iron, or the fierce beast, mixed beast. Um, and then the little horn being um, one of the one of the rulers of the that arises after the or out of the kingdom of Rome. The kingdom of Rome is influencing us even today. We had uh, the different kingdoms of the world have always called themselves things like the Holy Roman Empire, the Germanic kingdoms, and then even even in even in Russia, the Tsar is actually the word for Caesar. So we're continuing under the culture that the Roman Empire has set up. And the structure, the way of governing that the Roman Empire has set up. Um, so anyway, we'll go back to the vision now found in Daniel 8. A vision appeared unto me, and there stood before the river a ram which had two horns, and the two horns were high, but one was higher than the other. Of course, that's Persia. And the and the higher came up last. Media was there first, and then Persia ruling, and then Cyrus overcame, and the higher one came up last. No beast could stand before him. And a he goat came from the west over the face of the whole earth and touched not the ground. Again, that's the speed of Alexander the Great's conquest of the world. Amazingly fast, especially in that day without all the transportation that we have now. And the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. He came to the ram that had two horns, which I saw standing before the river, and ran upon him in the fury of his power, and brake his two horns, and trampled upon him. And when he was strong, the great horn was broken. So Alexander died very young. He was buried in Babylon. He didn't even make it back to Greece. When he was strong, the great horn was broken. And instead of it, there came up four notable horns toward the four winds of the heaven. So those are the four generals that survived the battle of the generals and established the four kingdoms out of the Greek, uh, original Greek kingdom. Uh, and continuing, and out of one of them, out of one of the four, comes a little horn. So we're skipping the Roman Empire here, but um, comes a little horn, the host of heaven, and some of the host, that is the stars, and of the stars, and some of the host and of the stars, it cast down to the ground and trampled upon them. Yea, it magnified itself, even to the prince of the host. So these would be um, the saints, the people that know God during the time of Jacob's trouble, and it magnified itself even to the prince of the host, even to Messiah, although Messiah will not have yet arrived on the scene yet to save the day, but he will speak against. He's that horn speaking great things. He'll speak against the Messiah, uh, and it. I guess we're still talking about this little horn. It took away from him the, the Lord's representative, even though he's not here on the scene yet, the continual burnt offering, and the place of his sanctuary, the Messiah's sanctuary, was cast down. And the host was given over to it, together with the continual burnt offering through transgression. And it cast down, the horn, cast down truth to the ground, and it did its pleasure and prospered. So Daniel's giving us a lot more details about this little horn and the things he does and how he does his own pleasure. He does whatever he wants, and he casts down truth to the ground. And he stops the burnt offering. So during the day of the Lord, by then the temple will be rebuilt and the offerings will be reestablished. But when this little horn comes along, he'll put an end to that for a time, at times, and half a time, 3.5 years. In Daniel, continuing on the same passage, 9 to 12, this is 13 to 14. Then I heard, how long shall be the vision concerning the continual burnt offering and the transgression that maketh desolate, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot? So the temple's rebuilt, the burnt offering is reestablished, but this little horn comes along because of a transgression that makes desolate. And that's explained in Daniel and also in Isaiah. We'll see this later on, but it's going to be an agreement with this little horn. Israel at one point in time make an agreement with this little horn for their safety. And that will be such a bad transgression that's when God gives over Israel, the people that have been regathered into the land and are there today. He'll give them over to be trodden underfoot by this little horn person. But how long will that go? 2,300 evenings and mornings. Then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. So a little longer than the 3.5 years. It'll take the 3.5 years to put an end to the little horn, and then some time to cleanse the sanctuary and set things up, set up the Messianic Kingdom. And continuing on, that's verse 14. Now we're in verse 16. And Gabriel said, behold, I will make thee know what shall be in the latter time of the indignation, for it belongeth to the appointed time of the end. So all these things are talking about one period of time in the future when all things are kind of finalized and come to pass and worked out. It's spoken about a lot in the Bible, the day of the Lord. For it belongeth to the appointed time of the end. The ram that had two horns, they are the kings of Media and Persia. So it's spelled out here, even though Daniel's in the, even though, actually by this time, this has already happened because during the time of Daniel's captivity, Persia does conquer Babylon. They are the kings of Media and Persia, and that's also spoken. The conquest of Babylon is spoken of in the book of Daniel. And the rough he-goat is the king of Greece, so that hasn't happened yet. Persia and Greece fought for many years, and eventually Greece won. The rough he-goat is the king of Greece, and the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king, meaning Alexander the Great, first king to conquer all of Greece and extend his empire beyond Greece. And as for that which was broken, the broken horn of Alexander, who died in his youth, in the place whereof four stood up, four kingdoms shall stand up out of that nation, out of Greece, but not with his power. Nothing compared to Alexander the Great. And the little horn, continuing on, that's verse 22, continuing on to 23. And in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors are come to a full, latter time is meaning the end times, the last times, when transgressors are come to the full, because God is waiting until the transgression is full, he mentions that in other places, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences shall stand up. Remember, we said that he'll be strong. He'll also be fierce. He'll be without mercy, without compassion in accomplishing his purposes. And he'll be understanding dark sentences. Remember that when he was described in the vision about the four beasts, he was a little horn with eyes of a man all over him. That shows that he has knowledge and he understands dark sentences. He knows more than a man could really know naturally. He's actually Satan's champion, and so he has the understanding of Satan. He has connection with the spiritual world, and he has information provided to him through Satan. So he understands dark sentences. And he shall stand up, and his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. Why isn't it by his own power? Because it's by the power of Satan, by the power of Lucifer. And he shall destroy wonderfully, and he shall prosper. He'll prosper in ruling the world and in all the wealth of the world. And he'll do his pleasure, whatever he wants to do. He'll convince the other governmental agencies to go along with him. Nobody will dare stand against him in government. And he shall destroy the mighty ones and the holy people. So he'll destroy the Jewish people. He'll just, not all, of course, but many. He'll destroy many of the Jewish people during that time of Jacob's trouble. And in their security shall he destroy many. Probably through truces and agreements. He'll take away the defenses of nations. They'll trust him, and then he'll renege on that and destroy many that were without defense. He shall also stand up against the Prince of Princes. The Prince of Princes is Messiah, yet to come to rule the world. But he shall be broken without hand, just like the rock was cut out without hands in the first image, and then it smote the statue in its toes. That was speaking of Messiah. He shall be broken. This anti-Messiah will be broken without hand, because the Messiah will be the one that breaks him. God will provide the judgment directly upon this man through the person of Messiah. So that's the first half of the survey of the book of Daniel. We've gotten through the first three of the parallel passages that talk about what's going to happen in the future to Daniel. At that time, Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome. The only part that's still future to us is the 10 kings and the little horn, and the coming of Messiah to destroy the little horn, and the establishment of the Messianic Kingdom. But I think it's pretty great how God says the same thing over and over here in different ways, to make sure that we don't miss what he's saying, to make sure that we don't try to make this just be symbolism or allegory or spiritualize it away and try to say it doesn't really represent physical kingdoms or whatever. He gives us enough detail here to show that he's talking about physical kingdoms here in relationship to the four beasts and the four metals, and he's talking about physical kingdom when he talks about Messiah's kingdom coming. Anyway, just so we can't miss his message, God repeats it here in this amazing way in parallel between these different visions. What's left to come is in part 2 of the survey is Daniel 9 concerning the 70 weeks, which has more to do with the timing in the future to Daniel and some still to us, and also the talking about these different kings in Daniel 11 and 12. So we'll get to learn more about the little horn and about Messiah, more importantly.